going on, guys? Welcome back to Before the Whistle. I'm your host, Maddy, and happy AAC Championship Week for a second year in a row. I feel like now that I'm not in my post-game analysis mode, can sit here and kind of just soak this in for a brief moment before we all get ready for this game this Saturday, again at 3 p.m., where Tulane hosts SMU to chase back-to-back AAC titles and go back to a New Year's Six Bowl. It's just incredible that those words are coming out of my mouth. And I think everyone listening to this that's been following along this season can agree, especially on a week-by-week basis. Just again, this idea of what does winning really look like? How important is point margin? How important is these dominating victories? The idea of playing the perfect game, a complete game, starting stronger in the third quarter. You could keep pointing at all of these things, and I'm just going to keep pointing to the fact that Tulane is 11-1 in the driver's seat of their destiny for back-to-back years now running. Last night, I hosted the AAC Championship pep rally at Tulane. It was a blast. I very much had my feeder kid energy going up there as I was going through those various segments. But something Jarius Monroe said up there really stuck with me because he used a word that felt like it's a step up this year. He said, now we're looking to be a dynasty here at this program. And last year, you heard the word legacy getting thrown around a lot. And words get thrown around a lot in sports. I say that all the time with culture and that kind of stuff. But I think Tulane really puts its money where its mouth is in being able to look at these buzzwords, what have you, and really have teeth to their arguments. The idea that the legacy of the 2022 team was setting the standard for success, that teams can look back and say the 2022 football team did this. What do you then call this season? Do you say, it's an interesting conversation of, is this the legacy of the 22 year taking place? Is this another type of legacy going on here? Or is dynasty the correct word for it? It's a lot of successful words that it's just a great time to be a Tulane fan. And I wanted to bring back someone on that I think is Tulane folklore. Fans love him. Quarterback Shaun King. I had him on earlier this year to talk about the Tulane season last year and preview what we were going to kind of expect out of the Green Wave this year. And it felt only right to have him back on before the biggest game of this year yet, how he's seen the growth of this Tulane team take form. I think a lot of fans that have been, again, worried about how the offense has looked here and there, hearing it from a former quarterback, one who played at Tulane, just having that understanding of how difficult winning a football game on a week-by-week basis truly is, and how much more difficult that is when there's a bunch of changes in the opponents that you're playing and that you're not the hunter, you're being the hunted on a week-by-week basis. So to hear, again, his remarks about that and what this really looks like for the future of Tulane football, a lot of it rests on a 1-0 here this weekend, but just the way that people all around the country, my dad's been able to tune in to all the national games in California. You go anywhere in the city now, and people are not only wearing Tulane stuff, but will yell at you walking down the street, roll wave, or start talking to you about Tulane. And to me, that is the mark of real sustained success here. And I dive more into that with Shaun King on this episode. Yeah. So I had you on, earlier this offseason to talk about the 98 year, kind of comparing it to last season. But I just remember all the guys last year saying they talked to the 98 team and this idea of leaving a legacy. What is your kind of view on this season now as kind of a football alum, especially from that 98 year, on what that legacy looks like for Tulane?
I'm just so proud of the guys like that in an environment that's so transient that we've been able to find continuity and be relevant. It's so hard now if you're not in a Power 5 conference to gain relevance. And the fact that they were able to win the Cotton Bowl, they won the conference last year when it still had all the big dogs in it. Houston, Cincy, and all those schools. I just think that's really significant. And to be able to come back and, hell, we probably should be undefeated. I mean, one game we lost, Pratt didn't even play, and it was to a team that, has only lost one game. So what a way to come back from last year. And I just love it. I love that we're relevant. If you can find relevance as a non-Power 5 school in college football, that's just so difficult to do. So I'm super proud of Coach Fritz. I'm super proud of the guys that they've just continued to find ways to win games. Not always the prettiest, not always the best for your heart, but they find a way to get it done. So I'm pulling for them Saturday. It's a tough SMU team, but I think they got what it takes.
Absolutely. And I'm just kind of curious too, there's all this kind of back and forth about those kind of closer wins. And, as I think a former player, I'm just curious, is your thoughts on that? I know the 98 team had these kind of higher scoring contests, but is it a little much ado about nothing with how much people kind of focus on those close wins for Tulane?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to win football games. It really is. That's why not a lot of people do it. And a win is a win is a win. Of course, you want to execute, at an elite level. You want to consistently, have your guys make the plays when they're available. But at the end of the day, man, if you're emotionally strong enough as a team and you're mentally tough enough to kind of overcome some Saturdays where you maybe aren't your best and still win, I just think it speaks to the growth of the program.
Yeah, without question. I keep saying it's a lot more difficult to win those close games than it is to really go up early and just kind of breeze through the next few quarters. I just feel like this team this year has taken on a lot of grit, especially after losing all the emotional leaders in Nick Anderson, Dorian Williams, and the play of guys like Tajay Spears. I think it really just makes this season all that more incredible, especially with all of the coaching turnover. I know that continuity with Willie Fritz at the top is so important, but just the way that the defense has really come on strong towards the end of the year and the offense has gotten through a lot of injuries has been really impressive.
Yeah, and a lot of teams can hunt, but very few programs can be hunted. And I think that's what you saw this year. Last year, Tulane was coming off of a bad year. And, they weren't on anyone's radar. They kind of had this us against the world mentality. And, they had a magnificent season. Now, coming into this year, they were the hunted. They were expected to win this conference. I think they were the preseason favorite, if I'm not mistaken. Either them or SMU. I think it was us.
It was us, yeah.
And they've been getting everybody's best effort. And they found a way to withstand it. And, hey, we got one more to go to win back-to-back conference championships. I mean, hey, what a streak, And hat tip to Willie Fritz, man. That's my guy. Coach Fritz could have left a bunch of times, and he's kind of stayed the course. And man, what a job he's done. He was his third different athletic director since he shout out to David Harris too. Welcome to the family. But I mean, Willie Fritz to me should be up for National Coach of the Year.
Without question, I do want to ask you a little bit on, the AD and the future of Tulane towards the end, but I'm with you. Last year, I thought Willie Fritz should have been, the front runner for that. I mean, the greatest single season turnaround in college football history. I just don't think can be really understated. But again, to your point, I just feel like Willie Fritz, the culture that he's instilled, it just made such a difference, especially with all of the turnover this year in the conference. You mentioned knocking off those big dogs. At least those were kind of the known familiars for Tulane. I mean, again, just going back kind of into your quarterback brain, the amount of teams that came into the conference this year, and then to hear all these guys say that they saw all these looks that they really hadn't seen on film. I mean, how difficult is that to just have a bunch of really unknown opponents?
And remember this offseason, I was doing a deep dive on the conference, and I had asked you, would you send me all of the staff changes? Like, I mean, what do we have? 5, 6 different coaches from last year's team that won the Cotton Bowl. So, I mean, that makes it even more impressive. As good as Michael Pratt has been, you can kind of tell he hadn't been fully healthy. You can tell he's battling with some little nicks and things, and they've still been able to find ways to win games. So, I mean, Fritz is my coach of the year. It's a shame that he doesn't get the just due that he deserves nationally. I know he gets it within the Tulane bubble and within the conference. I think everybody in the conference knows, but to me, nationally, he definitely should be one of the finalists for Coach of the Year.
Without question. And yeah, I just, you talk about the G5 thing from earlier. And I think, unfortunately, it takes having to kind of get to the Power 5 New Year's 6 dance in order to get that national spotlight. So hopefully that all comes together this weekend. To your point too about, the Tulane offense, Michael Pratt, he's been battling injuries all season long. It's kind of one of those unavoidable things, but now they are facing a quarterback in, I believe his first start, if I'm not correct, this year, under center for SMU. We've seen Kai Horton come in and do it for Tulane, but I mean, I think that is definitely an opportunity for Tulane to really take advantage of some inexperience for SMU.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's the strength of SMU. It was their passing attack. And to lose their starter, I mean, that's a big loss. But, I would caution, we were kind of a similar situation. I think it was last year we were going to Houston. and
Yeah.
Pratt had gotten hurt, and we started the freshman kid, right?
We
And
started
I think
Justin
maybe
Ibieta. He went down in the first series. So then Kai
right,
came in. Yeah.
and he played above expectations, and the team rallied around him. And you just have to approach it as if they don't have an injury because this is for the conference championship. I think Rhett Lashley just got a big extension there at SMU. If I'm not mistaken, aren't they going into the Big 12? If I'm not
AAC.
mistaken. Right. Yeah, the ACC. So I mean, they're trying to win one, on their way out. So they got a lot of things that are gonna have them super focused. I'm sure it'll be packed. Sorry, I can't be there. I will be at the bowl game, but we got to find a way to win it. Back-to-back championships. I don't think any men's sport, regardless, at Tulane has won back-to-back off the top of my head, if I'm not mistaken, since we got into the AAC.
Well,
I
the
think
fun fact Willie Fritz brought up was the last time he won back-to-back championships at all was when Herbert Hoover was president in 1930 and 31. So,
well, tell Willie I wasn't going back that far. Since we've been in the AAC, I don't think we have a men's sport, if I'm not mistaken, that's won back-to-back. So, I mean, I was thinking maybe baseball did, but I don't think they won back-to-back. I could be wrong, but anyway, it'd be a hell of an accomplishment. And listen, 98 was great, and we were really good. And I'll always say that we would whoop their butt in a head-to-head game. But you got to tip your hat to what they've been able to do over 2 years. I mean, and I just appreciate being able to talk my talk and make sure that one of the TVs in the private lounge is on Tulane. Because you can't, nobody can argue with me because we're top 25 programs. So I appreciate everything, man, that they're doing. And man, it's good to be a Green Wave right now.
oh, without question. I mean, I just talking to my dad, he's been able to follow along all year because they've been on national television. It's just the spotlight they've gotten this year has made such a difference. But I mean, again, you get the spotlight, and like you said, it's so much easier to hunt. And that's what Tulane did last year. They had the benefit of being the underdog in pretty much every single matchup. But your point about Tulane's backup quarterback situation, I've brought the same thing up where I don't expect Tulane to fall asleep at the wheel whatsoever here, because ultimately you have to have your backup quarterback ready for these opportunities. I do also feel like the weather, while it is a little bit of a deterrent for fan attendance, if this does kind of turn into a really torrential downpour, to me, that has to favor Tulane and what Mekhi Hughes has been able to do. I mean, he'll be the only player besides Matt Forte to have 7 100-yard games and not be named the starter until conference play. To me, he's just been an incremental part of the offense this year.
And I think it shows what happens when you have success, because normally if we would have lost a Tajay Spears caliber player, it would have taken us some time to fill that void. And I'm not saying that he's Tajay yet, but the fact that he can be as productive with all the coaching changes and with Pratt being injured and not completely healthy, I just think once you start getting on the national radar, you get into some living rooms that you weren't in before. And I think they're going to get it done. I didn't realize it was going to be a torrential downpour, but that's New Orleans. So hopefully it gives us a break. But I mean, that would favor Pratt and his experience over an inexperienced quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of those things where it's New Orleans. And for all we know, it was supposed to rain last year for the championship game. Then it just hung in the air and it was super humid the whole game. And it could be over by noon for all we know. But it's always good to know that weather conditions, if they do get poor, favor that the style of football that we've seen Tulane really be running all year. And just again, with all the injuries, they've been able to withstand the guys that have stepped up at all these different positions. But while you talk about that veteran experience in Michael Pratt, to me, the most impressive part of the win against UTSA last week was the way from just the starting snap, Frank Harris just looked so out of sorts and rattled out there. I mean, it was really just astonishing knowing how great of a quarterback he was to see him just immediately feel that pressure, and it showed.
And I think I had done a deep dive on him, and I had kind of seen that in certain games, if you can kind of get him out of rhythm, he becomes a lot more inconsistent. And I just think emotionally, if he kind of starts second guessing himself, he has a tendency to play out the string, meaning the rest of that game kind of in that emotional space. So I was happy that we were aggressive early, that we kind of, forced him to make some quick decisions. I mean, he's a heck of a player, and it's a heck of a win for us. So, I mean, a lot of stakes out here, though. I mean, we get to go, if we can win it, and get into another New Year's Six Day Bowl. That's another big payday. They're doing a great job of upgrading the facilities and making the student athlete experience better and better. So it's a big Saturday. I think we're going to come through.
I agree with you. Again, even this time last year, I mean, you could argue that there was just a little more name brand recognition with UCF being what it was going off to the Big 12, but especially because Tulane had lost to them in the regular season. But as much as these wins have felt close on a week by week basis, to me, what I've really seen take form is the mentality of winners. And last year, they really just manifested this belief in this brotherhood, but it was, ultimately based off of coming off of a 2-win year. Whereas I think you saw confidence for the first time in a long time in this Tulane team. And to be when that's really what made the huge difference on that last Friday game. Pressure aside, execution aside, it seemed like Tulane was prepared for the moment. And that is the biggest mark of last year's legacy, at least on my eye check.
And when I look at it, Maddy, it's just sustainability. The one advantage they have over what we were able to do in 98 is Coach Fritz. That's why I just always go back to him. Remember, we won and Tommy got the Clemson job, and we thought Rich was going to get the head job, but he didn't. So he went to Clemson. So it was like a whole brand new regime. So the fact that Coach Fritz has been able to be here through all of this, I think is really important. So hopefully we can continue to keep him. So David Harris, if you see this, that's your first job. Now you got to make sure the big guy, stays in the big office right there at Ullman.
Yeah, and just to kind of, go over to that point, I know that really kind of surprised a lot of people, just not kind of knowing his name off the top of their head and being the next athletic director. But it stuck out to me just, again, that he's a local down here in New Orleans. And I think when you talk about trying to get the fan engagement for Tulane, the community involvement here, having someone that grew up here could speak to, going to Mackenzie's and getting buttermilk drops. I mean, I just think that little bit of charm does make a difference down here in the South.
I think it does. And I also think it gives people hope that, this isn't just a stepping stone. The one thing I'll say about Troy Dannon is I always felt like this was just a pit stop for him till he got to the next destination. And I mean, people are pursuing, their personal goals in their careers. So I'm not saying it from a negative, connotation or with any malice. I'm just saying that was the reality of my interactions, was that he was here to do a good job, but for it to catapult him to something that he thought was bigger and a better fit. So, the fact that David has ties in New Orleans, I mean, that makes you feel a little better that, what, he might be here to see the program all the way through, hopefully the ascension to a Power 5 conference.
Yeah. And so about him wanting the job, the first thing he said in the press conference was the moment that the vacancy was announced, he actually reached out to someone he knew within that search firm world, saying, whenever this comes open, I want my name in that. And I think, again, for Tulane fans, just to have the idea of someone really wanting this job at Tulane. I mean, the fact that it is an attractive job, and it's not just in the AD, it's in the way that they use the transfer portal too. Just this idea of bringing back local homegrown guys. I feel like there was, especially with the student body being majority from the East Coast at Tulane, it's really something special to me that they've really been able to tap into that kind of local, bring these guys back, and now having, again, someone in that athletic director role that is from New Orleans and wanted to come back just as much. Yeah,
I've always said that the best adaptation of the English language is spoken in the state of Louisiana. So the more Cajun accent we can get there, the better. But I mean, you see a lot of schools doing that, especially non-Power 5s. We had started to do it at USF because sometimes you swing and miss on the best talent in your city because they want to go to, what they perceive to be bigger schools, and then they get there and, something doesn't work. And the first, I think idea that comes to mind is, okay, well, let's go back home. And that's a good thing for Tulane because, I mean, New Orleans is full of great football players. So I'm glad they're taking advantage of it.
Yeah. And something, the last thing that kind of stuck out to me too is it's kind of rare to have a former player also be your athletic director, and kind of understanding the idea of what it really takes to be a student athlete. Because I think that gets underrated for people, that Tulane isn't just kind of a go get your football degree type thing. You really have to have your academic side down. But I just think you can't really substitute having that experience, especially someone that did play at a Power 5 program and has that idea of those kind of differentiations.
Yeah, he brings a lot of things you like to the table. And, he gets here at a good time. Football seems to be headed in the right direction. So it's not like you got to rebuild that totally. I'm sure men's basketball is on his list of, things to kind of get, headed in a positive direction. So a good time to become the AD. And I'll get down there. Hopefully I'll meet him here at the bowl game. And let's get it done. Let's get it done. Let's get it done, Saturday. It'd be great to be back-to-back AAC champs. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, it really, I mean, it would be massively disappointing and it felt that way last week too, with the idea that they went 7-0 in conference play. And same for UTSA, that all of that really didn't matter. It just mattered about that one matchup, but that's that 1-0 mentality. And really, to me, that's the legacy of this 2022 to 23 football team is there's just never been a better argument for 1-0 that the way that they've approached each week by week basis, that next man up mentality, it's just been astonishing.
And Maddy, here's what's at stake as well is the AAC doesn't really have a big dog, to win it in its inaugural year with the new, configuration of teams, and to have won it last year. Tulane kind of establishes themselves as, at least to start off, the big dog, the team, the program, the university everybody's shooting for. So be a good position to be in, because I do think there's going to be some more movement, with the Power 5 stuff before this is all said and done. So I definitely want us to get involved in that, just because I feel like if you're not, at some point it's going to become a real detriment in the next 5 years. So, hopefully we get that opportunity. I think we deserve it, but let's go out and win our second AAC title.
Yes, exactly. That's the easiest way to kind of get this done. So just to kind of wrap this up, I'm just kind of curious, who to you has kind of been either the most improved player that you think from last year, or the biggest surprise for Tulane?
Ooh. I think the receivers have really stepped up and created like an explosive capability that I don't even know if we had as much last year. I mean, last year everything kind of ran through Tajay. But I'm drawing a blank on the kid's name. He's a big, tall kid. He made
Shea
some
Wyatt and
contested
Deuce
catches.
Watts.
Yeah, one's a little smaller, scat guy, and the other one's a taller. Sorry, guys, I'm getting old. But I think the fact that they've like really become like capable of dominating football games. Like a lot of teams have good receivers, and when everything's right, they're wide open, the ball's perfect, they catch it. But they've shown the ability to make contested catches, to get significant yards after the catch, to make tough catches in big moments in games. So I think that's what kind of the surprise that's really, been a pleasant one for me this year, is the fact that they've stepped up and really balled out.
Yeah, the contested catch thing, Chris Brazel sticks out the most to me, because he's the one that has a 6'4" frame. He put on like 20 pounds this offseason, because he was just really tall and thin last year. And it is just amazing that they've been able to withstand a several game stretch now without two of their top several receivers in Lawrence Keys, Jaquan Jackson, Keith Brown here and there, the way that they've just been able to pull it together on a week by week basis. That to me has been more impressive than this time last year. Because if I remember correctly, I think health was a lot more in their favor this time last year. But the fact that the O-line to me has had injuries, quite honestly, since like week 3 of this season, and it really hasn't mattered. You have guys like Shadre Hurst that have slotted in at left guard, right tackle. That's easier said than done, especially for a center, for the quarterback, and for everyone on that line. But that to me has been under the radar, super impressive.
Yeah, that's why Willie Fritz should be National College Football Coach of the Year.
Exactly. And now you got the defensive line really smelling blood in the water. So I am looking forward to this one this weekend, Shaun, and I am hoping that I will see you in either Phoenix or Georgia, depending on which one the Wave slot out into after they win this game on Saturday.
Let's hope it's Phoenix. We can get around to golfing. The weather's better in Phoenix in January.
Very true. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Maddy.
Again, that's Tulane legend Shaun King, y'all, former quarterback for the Wave. Quarterback the 1998 undefeated year, and it's just one of the greats that we're now having the pleasure of comparing our current quarterback Michael Pratt to these all-time greats at Tulane. It's just really I talked about this again briefly at the pep rally yesterday, but I went to this school from 2012 to 2016. I grew up in a family that really had no college football ties whatsoever. My final 2 choices for college were U of Miami and Tulane. I knew I was really foregoing the college football experience by choosing Tulane. And Yeah, there was honestly nothing to sneeze at when the team was not good and playing in a Superdome with 50 people at the game that I attended. Now, granted, they took us during a hurricane evacuation. I move in weekend freshman year, but really was not a very good first impression. And I really just didn't pay any attention to Tulane football again until Yeoman Stadium was built and I was able to go to a few games my senior year. I think everyone went a little too hard the first season tailgating wise and had a little bit of a sophomore hangover, but there was just really no football culture at Tulane. There was a really new tailgating culture that it's easier said than done. And people were not really getting to the games, I don't think, based on what I was being told. There was just really no idea of Tulane being a football school. Then I leave Tulane and, I move on. I'm working in psychology and I don't figure that I'll ever really tune into Tulane sports ever again, considering I didn't really tune into them while I was a student. And just to be able to be in this position now, it feels, I'm not one of those everything happens for a reason people. I don't really have any beliefs in that. I am a very pragmatic cynic at times, but it just feels really special to not be here just for these last 2 years, but to have gotten the context of the 2-10 year feels like such a critical part of this really like 3-year story at this point of this, honestly, legacy, dynasty, whatever you call it, identity of Tulane football. It to me has been built and sustained in these last 3 seasons, the one that's going to withstand moving forward. Just again, to bring up how absurd it was. We talked about this in the interview, but they put Herbert Hoover on the Yeoman scoreboard today. It was a lovely graphic just to show how long it's been since Tulane has reached this type of success back to back, because they reached this success last season. And I think that's where you're seeing just this completely different sense of confidence in people that cover the team, fans around the team. I know that SMU is a very prolific offense. And as we just talked about, I've said this all week, Tulane is going to be the last team to overlook a backup quarterback, especially when you look at how that's fared for Tulane. Kai Horton has had the most bizarre career at Tulane ever. His first career start is against Desmond Ridder, throwing to Sauce Gardner in coverage against Cincinnati, who went to the college football playoffs that year. And Tulane was leading them at halftime. He comes in for Justin Ibieta after one series in Houston last year and leads them to an overtime win. And he battled, all things considered, like a warrior through that Ole Miss game and kept Tulane toe for toe with the Power 5 program and took them to a win the next week at Southern Miss. Tulane knows what it's like to have your quarterback QB2 be the guy and how a team can really elevate themselves around that player. They've also faced a lot of teams where there's been a quarterback change. There's been injuries. Thinking back to last year, there were several at that. The USF game, their quarterback went down in the first quarter and had to face a guy they weren't necessarily prepared for. John Rice Plumlee goes down in the championship game last year. Now they're facing the third string quarterback because the second string guy didn't get on the plane, didn't want to race his redshirt year, something to that nature. There was a few more times that year. Then you look at this season where they have faced multiple quarterback system in Tulsa, but it's one of those things that you wish that you could get what you would consider your opponent's best shot. And that's no knock to Kevin Jennings, but it's also, without overlooking it, it's an acknowledged opportunity to rattle an inexperienced quarterback. I will just keep going back to last weekend and seeing how Frank Harris just completely shut down. I really appreciated Shaun King's insight and someone, again, that played that position. Going back, looking at his film and seeing that there are times where you can kind of rattle his cage a little bit. It's a question of whether or not they could do that for Kevin Jennings. But if you can do that to a guy that's been playing football for 7 years at the college level and a guy that's going to be in, his first career start for the season, I keep going back to the way that the defensive line just completely tore open last week. And it wasn't even so much about the sacks. It was the hits. It was every single play. Frank Harris was rolling out, and it wasn't like he was rolling out of pressure. He was just rolling into a different set of guys, tearing down his throat. And you have guys all over this defensive line that can produce. You have the depth there. They have that depth that has withstood some injuries throughout the middle of the year. But when you have a team that has been as prolific in the trenches and as mentally tough as Tulane, that's where I think you see this confidence of the expectation of winning this weekend, because this is a team of winners and winners are expected to win. So with that said, winners are helped a lot by their home atmosphere. And anyone that went to the game last year for the championship game, I don't think I need to be telling this to. I was really pleasantly surprised by the Black Friday turnout, considering there were no students really in town and people have holiday obligations, what have you. I know that there are some concerns about the weather this weekend. We live in New Orleans. If you live in New Orleans, you choose to live by the weather that is New Orleans. My Halloween, my senior year at Tulane, was a torrential downpour. Do you think I didn't go to frat parties or the boot? Because that's kind of where you're looking at for the mentality of some of these students. Put a poncho on and go to the game. My final game that I went to at Yeoman was my homecoming 2015. They played UConn. They lost 7-3. I sat through 3 quarters before I just was too miserable because I didn't bring a poncho. Learn from me. Campus Connection, Broadway and Maple, they have 400 ponchos as of yesterday. I'm sure they are selling like flies now, but go get one or bring an umbrella, bring your rain jacket. I know that you guys can prepare in advance, but this is something that you do not want to miss out on, especially if you were there last year, especially if you bumped into me on the field. Having that opportunity to do that 2 years in a row, it doesn't come along, no matter what conference, what level you're in. Back-to-back success like this, it speaks to Willie Fritz. It speaks to the way that he's done this at every level of every program that he's gone to. It's not just that season of unmatched success. It's the way that they follow up the season after. And it's just been a joy to watch Tulane battle it out through this regular season. And I am really grateful that I will have one more opportunity to be on the Yeoman sideline with my championship confetti from last season already in my fanny pack, ready to go. Again, that game is at 3 p.m. this Saturday. It's on ABC. We go on the air at 2 p.m. on 104.1 The Spot, on the Tulane Athletic and Varsity Network apps, or on Sirius XM channels 113 and 201. If you'd rather listen to your local broadcast crew than the TV announcers, you can also head to syncmygame.com. They'll show you how to sync up our broadcast, where I will be giving as much insight from the sidelines as best as I can. You can hear Corey and Steve enthusiastically calling your favorite 1-0 of this year. And I will see you all on Saturday. Roll Wave.